In the quiet tree-lined streets of a suburban neighborhood, the evening air was cool and still, with a gentle breeze rustling through the leaves of the old oak trees that lined the sidewalks. The tranquility that had long been the hallmark of the community was shattered on an ordinary night when the sound of a telephone ringing inside a modest home cut through the silence like a desperate plea. Inside that modest home, 4-year-old Mia clutched her faded teddy bear as she stared at the telephone with wide, frightened eyes. Her small, delicate hands trembled as she dialed 911. In a soft, quivering voice that belied the enormity of what she did not fully understand, she said, "I'm hungry, and my nanny is not waking up." Then, with innocent confusion, she added, "And there's ketchup on her," mistaking the dark stains for the harmless condiment she knew from home. Each word carried the raw urgency of a child's simple needs, unwittingly exposing her to a nightmarish reality she could barely comprehend. At a busy precinct miles away, Detective Adam Keller was immersed in reviewing files when the urgent call crackled over the radio. The familiar tone of distress jolted him from his routine. He recognized the voice as that of a frightened child. With memories of past cases, ones marked by tragedy and loss, flashing through his mind, Adam quickly gathered his things. He pulled on his worn jacket, a silent promise to the victims he'd once failed to protect, and stepped out into the cool night determined to act swiftly. Driving through the neighborhood, Adam's mind churned with possibilities as the flashing red and blue lights of police cruisers illuminated the dark streets. Every siren's wail, every passing car added to the weight of a case that was already beginning to take shape in his thoughts. He recalled the haunting cries of children from cases past, each one echoing in his memory, fueling his resolve to arrive as soon as possible. Upon reaching the modest home, Adam was immediately struck by the unsettling scene before him. The front door was slightly ajar, and as he entered the living room, the staccato rhythm of his footsteps was met by a sight he would never forget. There, lying on the cold, hard floor, was Ashley, the young nanny, her lifeless body spread out amid a pool of dark, crimson blood. The once warm and welcoming room now resembled a macabre tableau, a place where normalcy had been violently upended. Mia was seated in the corner, her small frame huddled against the wall as she clutched her beloved teddy bear. Her tear-streaked face and wide, terrified eyes told the story of a little girl who could not comprehend the horror unfolding around her. Uniformed officers moved with somber efficiency throughout the space, their quiet whispers and measured steps blending with the soft, intermittent whimpers of the child. Adam's experienced gaze swept over the scene, noting every detail, from the pattern of scattered blood droplets to the disarray of furniture, and his attention was captured by a faint trail of blood that led away from Ashley's body. It was a clue, a silent witness to the desperate struggle that had taken place moments before her final breath. Kneeling beside the body, Adam brushed aside a stray lock of hair from Ashley's face, feeling the painful weight of responsibility settle in his chest. Every detail in cases like this was crucial, and the blood trail suggested that Ashley had fought hard in her final moments. The thought that someone close to her might have known her well enough to instigate such a personal attack made the investigation all the more complex and heart-wrenching. Outside, the rain began to fall softly, its rhythmic patter on the roof echoing the steady tick of time. The street, bathed in the glow of sporadic streetlights, appeared as though it held its breath, awaiting the next twist in a case that was already spiraling into darkness. For Adam, the atmosphere was charged not only with sorrow, but with an intense determination to get to the bottom of this tragedy. The call from Mia had set in motion events that would unravel secrets hidden behind the facade of a seemingly ordinary family, while forensic technicians worked meticulously to document every trace of evidence. Adam slowly approached Mia. Sitting on the edge of a worn sofa, he offered her a gentle smile and a soft, reassuring tone. "I'm here to help you, Mia. You're safe now," he said, carefully choosing words that might offer comfort without overwhelming her fragile state of mind. Mia looked up at him, her eyes reflecting both confusion and a dawning trust that perhaps she was no longer alone in this nightmare. In that quiet moment, the weight of the case pressed on Adam's conscience. The phone call that had pierced the night was not just an isolated cry for help. It was the beginning of a journey through sorrow, violence, and hidden truths. Every raindrop that fell outside seemed to carry a piece of the mystery, and every echo of Mia's soft cries reverberated like a promise that he would not rest until justice was served. Stepping outside briefly, Adam paused on the doorstep as the rain washed over the neighborhood, cleansing it momentarily of the darkness that had invaded its peace. He closed his eyes and silently vowed that no stone would be left unturned. The scene before him was a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the thin line between safety and terror. In the midst of that harrowing silence, the call from a small, frightened voice had set in motion a chain of events that would change many lives forever. Returning to the scene with renewed purpose, Adam began coordinating with his team. Every detail was scrutinized, every question was asked. The trail of blood, the disordered objects, the slight smell of something metallic in the air. All these fragments were keys to a puzzle that was slowly taking shape. As he methodically reviewed the evidence, his heart ached for the innocence lost in that very room and for the promise that Mia, now clinging to hope in the arms of dedicated officers, would be protected from the darkness that had claimed Ashley. In the lingering moments before dawn, as the rain began to ease and the chaos was momentarily tamed by the steady efforts of law enforcement, Adam took a deep breath. The case was only beginning, and the echoes of that phone call, the desperate cry of a hungry, frightened child, would remain with him as a constant reminder of the fragile boundary between hope and despair. With determination etched into every line of his face, he stepped forward into the unknown, resolved to confront the hidden secrets that had shattered a life and threatened to destroy the quiet suburb he once believed was safe. In the early light of a gray morning, the somber atmosphere inside the modest home was punctuated by the steady hum of forensic equipment and the soft murmur of officers discussing the details of the previous night. Detective Adam Keller had set up a temporary command center in the living room, where every corner still held silent testimony to the brutality that had unfolded. The forensic team worked with measured precision, taking photographs, collecting samples, and cataloging evidence that might one day piece together the final moments of Ashley's life. The early rays of dawn crept through the drawn curtains, casting long, eerie shadows that danced across the walls. Adam sat at a cluttered table, his eyes fixed on a series of photographs and detailed sketches of the scene. The image of Mia, small, trembling, and clutching her teddy bear, remained seared into his memory. Every detail of the child's frightened expression, the soft whimpers that punctuated the silence, and the ghostly aftermath of the night's horrors combined to create a lingering sense of melancholy and urgency. Gently, Adam approached Mia, who now sat on an old, worn sofa with a blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders. He knelt beside her and spoke softly. "Mia, can you tell me what you remember? Anything at all will help." His tone was tender and patient, as he carefully sought to extract fragments of memory from a mind traumatized by events too immense to understand. After a long pause, Mia's voice, barely above a whisper, broke the silence. "I heard a noise. Then I saw the lights, and then everything was dark," she said. The words were fragmented, each syllable steeped in the confusion and fear that had gripped her in the aftermath of the nightmare. As the forensic team continued their painstaking work, a knock at the door signaled the arrival of Sarah, Mia's mother. In a state of frantic distress, she burst into the room, her face pale and her eyes wide with a mix of anguish and disbelief. "Mia, my love," she cried as she swept her daughter into a tight embrace, her voice quivering with the weight of unspoken fears. Adam met her gaze with a mixture of professional calm and personal concern. "Sarah, I need to ask you some questions about last night," he said. Though her voice trembled, Sarah managed to reply, "I just want to know that Mia is safe. Is everything okay?" There was an unmistakable strain in her tone, a blend of maternal worry and something darker, a hint of secrets that lay just beneath the surface. Outside, a neighbor who had observed the unfolding scene stepped forward hesitantly. With a voice laden with concern, the neighbor recounted, "I heard a loud argument last night, voices raised in anger, and then I heard a deep, unfamiliar voice, one that didn't belong here." Though the neighbor's account was vague, it added a crucial layer of complexity to the investigation, suggesting that the violence might have been preceded by a conflict that reached far deeper than anyone had initially suspected. Amidst the organized chaos of the investigation, Adam's eyes were drawn to a small, half-burned note lying near the window. Its edges were charred, and the ink had run in places from the heat, yet the message remained partially legible. With gloved hands, Adam picked it up and carefully read its fragmented words. The note spoke of a desperate struggle, a final plea that hinted at a long-standing bitterness and hidden resentment. It was as if Ashley had tried to leave behind one last cry for help, a silent testament to the turmoil that had plagued her final hours. Throughout the morning, as every piece of evidence was collected and recorded, Adam's thoughts turned inward. He recalled a similar case from years past, a case where the cries of a child had led him deep into a labyrinth of family secrets and betrayals. The recollection was painful, a reminder of the darkness that sometimes lurked behind closed doors. In that past investigation, as in this one, the truth had been obscured by layers of deception, fear, and the unspoken scars that people carry with them. Now, faced with the faint echoes of that same sorrow, Adam vowed to dig deeper, to follow every whisper and every clue until the full story was laid bare. Outside, the rain had picked up again, its rhythmic patter on the windows echoing the relentless passage of time. The soft sounds of nature mingled with the murmurs of the officers, creating a symphony of urgency and melancholy that filled the air. Every piece of evidence, the careful notes, the photographs, the half-burned message, was a small key to unlocking a mystery that was far more complicated than it first appeared. Sarah's anxious glances, the neighbor's hesitant testimony, and Mia's broken recollections all combined to create a tapestry of fear, suspicion, and hidden truths. In the quiet moments between the bustling activity, Adam sat with his thoughts, a heavy sadness mingling with a determined resolve. The investigation had only just begun, yet it was already clear that Ashley's death was not an isolated tragedy. It was the culmination of long simmering conflicts and unspoken resentments within a family that had, in many ways, been teetering on the edge of collapse. With a final steadying breath, Adam resolved that he would not let the echoes of the past be silenced. Instead, he would use every scrap of evidence, every whispered memory to bring the truth to light, no matter how painful it might be. As the day wore on and more witnesses came forward, the investigation slowly began to piece together the events of that dreadful night. The evidence, though scattered and fragmented, hinted at a story of betrayal, jealousy, and a deep-seated fear that had consumed those involved. In that small, evidence-laden room, the echoes from the past were growing louder, urging Adam to confront the secrets that had been buried for far too long. When the forensic team finally wrapped up their work for the morning, Adam stepped outside for a brief moment of reflection. The world beyond the modest home had already begun to stir with the promise of a new day, but within him, the echoes of that troubled night continued to resonate. Every whispered word, every half-remembered detail from Mia and Sarah was a reminder that the truth was a fragile thing, one that needed to be nurtured and uncovered slowly, carefully, until it shone through the darkness. With a deep, resolute sigh, Detective Adam Keller returned to his work, determined to follow every lead and to piece together the shattered fragments of a night that had forever altered the lives of those involved. The past, with all its haunting echoes and hidden secrets, was calling to him, and he would not rest until every truth was revealed. As the investigation advanced and the initial shock of the crime began to fade into a tense routine of inquiry and evidence collection, the focus turned to a man whose turbulent history was already known to many in the community. Ethan, Ashley's ex-boyfriend, had long been a figure of volatile passion and unchecked jealousy. His reputation for explosive outbursts and unpredictable behavior made him an immediate person of interest in a case that was steeped in personal betrayal and mounting animosity. Ethan was brought into a stark, minimally furnished interrogation room. The single overhead light cast harsh shadows on his face, accentuating the hardened lines of a man who had lived a life marked by impulsivity and regret. Seated across from Detective Adam Keller, Ethan's eyes burned with a mixture of defiance and sorrow. "I left before everything got out of hand," he declared in a tone that was both defensive and anguished, as if he were trying to convince himself as much as he was trying to convince Adam of his innocence. Adam leaned forward, his gaze unyielding as he pressed on. "Ethan, we have evidence placing you at the scene. Your fingerprints, your presence. It suggests you were much closer to Ashley than you claim." The accusation was delivered with a cold precision that left no room for evasion. Ethan's eyes narrowed, and for a moment anger flared in his expression before giving way to a deep-seated despair. "I was there," he admitted reluctantly, "but I did nothing wrong. I left when I saw things were getting out of control. I couldn't bear to see her like that." His words were fraught with bitterness, yet there was an unmistakable tremor in his voice, a sign that the truth was more complex than his simple narrative. Outside the confines of the interrogation room, whispers began to circulate among officers and investigators alike. Ethan's evasive answers and defensive posture were raising red flags, and the once isolated suspicion around him was growing. At the same time, another dark undercurrent in the case began to surface, one that involved Mia's own family. Sarah, the distraught mother whose emotional turmoil had been evident since the discovery of the crime, was increasingly drawing attention. Her past behavior, marked by angry outbursts and unsettling threats toward Ashley, added a layer of complexity that made her an equally plausible suspect in the eyes of some. Parallel to Ethan's interrogation, the investigation turned its gaze towards Sarah. Rumors and testimonies from neighbors painted a picture of a woman driven by jealousy and fear, a woman who had grown increasingly unstable in the face of what she perceived as a threat to her family's sanctity. She was jealous, consumed by her own fears and insecurities, one neighbor confided in a hushed tone, suggesting that Sarah's own internal demons might have played a role in the tragic chain of events. Amidst the mounting pressure, a breakthrough came in the form of a secret diary, one that had belonged to Ashley. A close friend of the nanny had delivered the diary to the police, its pages filled with intimate confessions, cryptic warnings, and desperate pleas. The diary revealed that Ashley had been receiving anonymous threats long before the night of her murder. "I am receiving threats," one entry read in hastily scribbled handwriting, "and I fear that I may not have much time left." The raw vulnerability in these words, the palpable fear that leapt from each line, lent new urgency to the investigation. It was as if Ashley had known that someone was out to destroy her, and her final written words were a desperate attempt to warn the world. Adam spent hours poring over the diary, letting the intimate details of Ashley's life wash over him. Each entry was a window into a soul that had been tormented by secrets and betrayal. The diary hinted at a tangled web of relationships, a series of anonymous threats, unexplained encounters, and hints of an obsession that reached far beyond a simple breakup. The final pages ended abruptly with a cryptic line, a silent message that suggested the killer might have intended to leave one final secret unsaid. It was a chilling clue, one that made it all too clear that the case was far from simple. As the interrogation of Ethan continued, Adam pressed him with increasingly pointed questions. "Ethan, where exactly were you between the time of the argument and the discovery of the body?" he demanded, his voice calm but unyielding. Ethan's eyes flickered with uncertainty, and after a pause that stretched into an eternity, he replied, I went home. I needed some air to clear my head." His answer was vague, and the slight pause before his response did not escape Adam's keen attention. Every hesitation, every subtle shift in his demeanor was a thread in the larger tapestry of deception. Outside the sterile room, the building's corridors buzzed with quiet conversations as officers compared notes and evidence. The initial picture was beginning to change. What had once seemed like a straightforward case of a jealous ex-boyfriend now unfolded as a complex narrative involving deep-seated family issues and unspoken resentments. Sarah's earlier threats, the hushed voices of neighbors, and even the subtle behavior of Mark. All these elements were slowly interweaving into a narrative that suggested the truth was more convoluted than anyone had imagined. After leaving the interrogation room, Adam wandered the long, dim corridors of the precinct, lost in thought. He recalled the pain etched on the faces of those affected by similar tragedies in his past. The investigation was no longer just about finding a killer. It was about understanding the intricate interplay of human emotions, the destructive power of jealousy, and the desperate need for connection that, when denied, could lead to irreversible actions. By the time the day yielded to a muted twilight, the evidence painted a murky picture. Ethan's story was fraught with contradictions, while the dynamics within Mia's family hinted at a deeper, more pervasive dysfunction. In that charged environment, the first suspect was not merely a man with a troubled past. It was a symbol of how unchecked passion and hidden resentments could lead to catastrophic outcomes. Adam knew that the road ahead would be long and fraught with painful revelations, yet he was resolved to follow every lead until the truth emerged from the shadows. With the secret diary resting on his desk and Ethan's evasive answers echoing in his mind, Detective Keller prepared himself for the long night ahead. The interrogation had ended for the day, but the investigation was far from over. The first suspect had provided a glimpse into a much darker narrative, one in which the lines between victim and perpetrator were blurred by the corrosive effects of jealousy and obsession. As Adam turned off the lights in his small office and stepped out into the cool night, he carried with him the unshakable conviction that every whispered lie, every hesitated word, would eventually lead him to the heart of the truth. Night fell heavily upon the city as Detective Adam Keller returned to the evidence room, a space bathed in the cold glow of flickering fluorescent lights and filled with the tangible remnants of a tragedy too raw to ignore. The room was cluttered with photographs, sample vials, and documents that, together, formed the delicate mosaic of evidence needed to understand what had happened. At the center of this evidence lay Ashley's diary, a fragile leather-bound journal that now served as a key to unlocking the hidden secrets of a life marked by fear and despair. With deliberate care, Adam opened the diary once more. The pages, yellowed by time yet filled with urgent, scribbled notes, revealed a side of Ashley that had been kept hidden from the world, a life lived in the constant shadow of apprehension. Each entry chronicled moments of subtle terror, whispers in the dark, fleeting glances over a shoulder, and the ever-present fear that danger lurked just beyond the edge of every ordinary day. "I am afraid," one entry read, the words trembling on the page as if echoing the very beat of her heart. It was clear that Ashley had been aware of a creeping threat, one that had grown more insidious with each passing day. In the quiet of the evidence room, Adam began to trace the connections between the diary's entries and the physical clues collected at the crime scene. One detail that stood out was the faint scent of an unidentified female perfume, lingering near Ashley's body like a ghost of someone who had been intimately close to her. The aroma was delicate and refined, an odd detail in a scene otherwise marked by brutality and chaos. It hinted at the possibility that someone whose identity had been obscured might have played a more direct role in the events leading up to Ashley's death. Determined to follow every lead, Adam revisited the now familiar setting of the modest home. In the dim light of early morning, he retraced the steps of that fateful night. Every object, every disordered piece of furniture, and every blood stain was examined with a meticulous eye. The absence of forced entry and the chaotic signs of an internal struggle suggested a confrontation that was deeply personal, a violent collision between those who once trusted one another. The realization that the murderer might have been someone from within Ashley's inner circle sent a chill through him. Later that evening, Adam sat down with a forensic expert to discuss the significance of the perfume. "It's not a common fragrance," the expert explained, his tone measured as he examined the sample. "It's something distinctive, a scent that might be associated with a very small group of people." The revelation added a new dimension to the investigation. The perfume was more than a trivial detail. It was a potential link to an elusive figure whose identity remained hidden among the shadows of Ashley's troubled life. Returning to the diary, Adam read the entries with growing intensity. The pages chronicled a series of encounters that painted a portrait of a woman desperate to protect her future. In one entry, Ashley wrote about receiving a warning from a stranger, a brief, almost inaudible voice on the phone that left her shaking with fear. In another, she described a day when she felt as though unseen eyes were following her, and she could sense a presence that made her skin crawl. Each detail, recorded in hurried script, revealed a mounting anxiety that had culminated in the tragedy that now lay before them. As the hours passed, the investigation began to weave together the disparate threads of evidence. The diary not only provided insights into Ashley's fears, but also hinted at a secret that had long been concealed, a secret that might implicate someone close to her. The final, hastily scrawled lines of the diary were particularly haunting, ending abruptly with a cryptic reference to a name that Adam had not expected to see. It was as if Ashley had been on the brink of uncovering a truth too dangerous to speak aloud, and in her final moments, she had chosen to leave behind only a fragment of a warning. In the solitude of that long, rain-drenched night, Adam's thoughts turned inward. The shadows of the past were growing longer, and every page of the diary seemed to echo with the desperate pleas of a woman who had known too much and feared even more. The evidence suggested that the violence had not been a spur-of-the-moment act of passion, but a calculated outcome of a web of secrets, one that stretched its tendrils into every corner of a life once filled with hope. The hidden presence, the distinctive perfume, and the abrupt, ominous ending of the diary all pointed to the fact that Ashley had been entangled in something far more complex than a simple case of domestic strife. Adam resolved to follow every lead, no matter how faint, determined that the truth behind Ashley's hidden world would eventually be revealed. He spent the night cross-referencing the diary entries with witness statements, photographs of the scene, and forensic reports. Every detail was a piece of a larger puzzle, a puzzle that was slowly coming together as he unearthed long-buried clues from a life filled with both light and darkness. By the time the first hints of dawn began to break through the evidence room's grimy windows, Adam closed the diary with a solemn promise. The case was evolving, and every new piece of evidence, no matter how small, was a step toward understanding the intricate interplay of trust, betrayal, and fear that had led to the brutal end of Ashley's life. With a renewed determination, he vowed that he would leave no stone unturned, no secret unexplored, until the full truth emerged from the shadows. As the investigation progressed, the quiet hum of routine was replaced by an undercurrent of tension that seemed to seep into every conversation, every whispered confession. Detective Adam Keller now found himself navigating not only the labyrinth of evidence surrounding Ashley's death, but also the tangled, painful dynamics within Mia's own household. It was clear that the truth was far from simple. It was buried beneath layers of long-held resentments, suppressed emotions, and secrets that threatened to tear a family apart. In a stark, windowless interrogation room, Mark, Sarah's quiet, reserved husband, was brought in for questioning. His face was etched with fatigue and worry as he sat across from Adam. "I was at home, busy with work," Mark insisted, in a calm, measured tone. Yet the slight tremor in his voice and the furtive glances he cast downward betrayed an internal struggle, as if he were holding back more than he was willing to admit. Adam's eyes narrowed as he pressed further. "Mark, we need a full account of your actions that night. Every detail matters." Despite his steady tone, Mark's silence and evasion spoke volumes. It was as if the burden of hidden truths weighed too heavily on him, a burden he was unwilling or unable to share. Across town, in a stark interview room bathed in the harsh glare of fluorescent lights, Sarah, Mia's distraught mother, sat with her eyes fixed on the floor. In a voice that trembled with a mixture of regret and raw emotion, she admitted, "I did send angry messages to Ashley. I was afraid, jealous even, but I never meant to hurt her." Her confession was not an outright admission of guilt in the murder, but a window into the chaos that had long festered beneath her seemingly protective exterior. Sarah's eyes, red from crying, revealed the inner torment of a woman who had allowed her own fears and insecurities to dictate her actions. Actions that now seemed to have contributed to the tragedy. The investigation took an unexpected turn when digital experts uncovered a series of deliberate attempts to erase data from Ashley's cell phone. The technicians explained in a measured tone that the deletions were not random. They had been executed with a precision that suggested premeditation. "It appears someone wanted to remove all traces of communication," one expert explained. The revelation was both alarming and illuminating. It pointed to a calculated effort to conceal vital information about the hours leading up to Ashley's death. This digital erasure, combined with the mounting emotional testimonies, began to paint a picture of a family in which every member harbored secrets that could have festered into something far more dangerous. As Adam pieced together these disparate threads, the guarded answers from Mark, the anguished admissions of Sarah, and the silent testimony of deleted data, a broader narrative began to emerge. The hidden truth was not merely about a singular act of jealousy or betrayal. It was the result of years of simmering tensions, miscommunications, and unspoken resentments. Mark's financial troubles, long kept hidden behind the facade of a dedicated worker, had been misinterpreted by Sarah as a sign of infidelity. In turn, Sarah's deep-seated fears and jealous impulses had driven her to lash out in ways that only deepened the rift in her family. The cumulative effect of these hidden failures created a volatile atmosphere, a powder keg that, once ignited, led to irreversible consequences. In an effort to confront these painful truths, Adam arranged a meeting with the key players of the family. In a small private room, Sarah, Mark, and a few other central figures gathered under the intense scrutiny of the investigation. "We are here to uncover the truth, however painful it may be," Adam stated firmly, his voice resonating with authority and compassion. The room was heavy with unspoken emotions, regret, anger, and the raw vulnerability of a family forced to confront its darkest secrets. In that charged silence, Mark finally admitted to the financial difficulties that had haunted him for years, a confession that painted a new light on the couple's long, festering discord. Sarah, overcome by the weight of her own actions, broke down in a torrent of tears. "I was so afraid of losing everything," she whispered, her voice trembling with remorse as she looked at Mark, now realizing that her jealousy had been misdirected. Yet even as these personal demons were brought into the harsh light of day, the mystery of Ashley's death was not fully resolved. The digital footprints left by the erased data on her cell phone remained an enigma, a potential key to understanding the final hours of her life. Adam's team worked tirelessly to recover even the faintest remnants of those deleted communications, aware that within them lay the possibility of unraveling the full motive behind the murder. Every byte of data, every hidden file, was a piece of the larger puzzle that spanned not just a single night of violence, but a lifetime of secrets and lies. As the investigation pressed on, the hidden truth began to take shape. It was a narrative woven from the threads of human frailty, a story of fear, jealousy, and the desperate measures people take to protect their fragile sense of self. For Adam, every confession, every newly uncovered detail was both a burden and a beacon of hope. The path to justice was never simple, and the hidden truths emerging from the depths of the family's troubled past were as heartbreaking as they were essential to understanding the full scope of the tragedy. In the quiet aftermath of the intensive interviews and painstaking digital analysis, Detective Adam Keller stood alone in his office, the evidence spread out before him like a map to a painful destination. The hidden truth, though slowly emerging, was layered in complexity, a reminder that sometimes the most devastating betrayals come not from a single act of malice, but from years of suppressed fears and unspoken resentments. With a determined resolve, Adam vowed that he would not rest until every secret was brought into the light, and every piece of the puzzle was laid bare for the sake of justice, for Ashley, and for the innocent life of little Mia. The investigation took a dramatic turn on a cold, rain-soaked afternoon when an urgent message shattered the temporary calm that had settled over the case. In the midst of ongoing interrogations and painstaking analysis, the unthinkable happened. Mia was missing. The disappearance of the small, vulnerable girl sent shockwaves through the precinct and ignited a frantic manhunt that would test every ounce of determination in Detective Adam Keller's heart. The moment the news broke, the atmosphere in the station transformed from measured routine to a state of emergency. Officers scrambled, radios crackled with urgent commands, and every available unit was dispatched to comb the rain-drenched streets of the city. For Adam, the disappearance of Mia was not just another procedural hiccup. It was a direct challenge to protect the innocent at all costs. He recalled the memory of her frightened eyes, the soft whimpers of distress from that harrowing night, and he vowed that he would not rest until she was returned safely to her mother's arms. Under a sky heavy with relentless rain, the city transformed into a chaotic maze of slick roads and blurred streetlights. In the midst of this storm, rumors began to coalesce around one name, Ethan. The volatile ex-boyfriend, whose earlier interrogation had been marked by evasions and growing suspicion, was now believed to have taken drastic measures. It soon became evident that, in a desperate bid to reclaim what he felt was rightfully his, Ethan had kidnapped Mia. The evidence was mounting, and every available officer was now fixated on the task of locating the stolen vehicle and apprehending the dangerous suspect. The ensuing pursuit was a high-octane spectacle of flashing sirens, roaring engines, and the incessant patter of rain on asphalt. In a flurry of coordinated action, police cruisers weaved through narrow streets and dark alleys, their lights cutting through the murky darkness. Adam monitored the chase from a mobile command unit, his eyes fixed on a digital map that tracked the suspect's last known location. Every heartbeat, every second that ticked by was critical. The stakes could not have been higher. Mia's life hung precariously in the balance. A few tense minutes later, a grainy video clip arrived at the precinct, its images sending a chill down Adam's spine. The video showed Ethan behind the wheel of a stolen car, his face contorted in a mixture of rage and desperation, while in the back seat, Mia's terrified cries could be faintly heard over the roar of the engine and the pounding rain. The haunting image of the little girl trapped and alone intensified the urgency of the chase. "We must act now," Adam barked into the radio, his voice resolute and commanding. The message was unequivocal. Every moment counted. The police pursuit escalated rapidly. Under the cover of the torrential rain, officers raced along slick roads, navigating through narrow side streets and over treacherous intersections. Adam's vehicle moved with calculated precision as he coordinated with team members, issuing commands, predicting escape routes, and monitoring the suspect's every move. The city blurred into a series of rain-soaked streaks, and amid the chaos, Adam's thoughts were singular: to rescue Mia from the clutches of a man driven by twisted obsession. Helicopters joined the chase, their searchlights cutting through the darkness and providing aerial support. Roadblocks were set up along likely escape routes, and every available unit was mobilized in a coordinated effort to intercept the fleeing car. The city's infrastructure, usually a backdrop for everyday life, became the arena for a desperate race against time. Every twist and turn on the road was a calculated risk, and every drop of rain was a reminder of the fragile nature of life in the midst of chaos. At one critical juncture, the pursuit led the officers to a labyrinth of narrow, dimly lit streets in a densely populated neighborhood. The suspect's vehicle, its reckless speed unsustainable on the slick pavement, began to falter. The roar of engines and the wail of sirens filled the air as Adam's team worked to cut off every possible escape route. "Block all exits on Elm Street," Adam ordered, his voice echoing through the radio. "Prepare for a stop. We cannot let him get away." In that charged moment, every officer understood that the safe recovery of Mia was paramount, and no sacrifice would be spared to ensure her protection. The chase continued relentlessly into the night, each minute stretching into what felt like an eternity. The rain showed no sign of letting up, and the city, shrouded in darkness, was a blur of neon reflections and hurried shadows. Adam's mind was a maelstrom of strategy and emotion. Each flash of a taillight, every screeching brake, served as a stark reminder that a child's life was at stake. The relentless pursuit was not merely a physical endeavor. It was a battle against time and a test of the human spirit under duress. As the operation neared its climax, a break in the chaos presented itself. A narrow, deserted road on the outskirts of the city, illuminated by only a few solitary street lamps. Here, the suspect's vehicle was forced to slow, its momentum unsustainable on the unforgiving, rain-soaked surface. Adam seized the moment, coordinating with his team to set up a precise perimeter. "Now is the time," he commanded over the radio, his tone firm and resolute. In that split second, the collective efforts of the officers converged into a singular act of determination. In the tense standoff that followed, the suspect's car came to an abrupt halt. The rain pounded on the roof as the officers moved in swiftly, surrounding the vehicle and cutting off every potential exit. Adam's heart pounded in his chest as he listened to the static-laced radio updates, a desperate symphony of determination and hope. With a final decisive command, the officers moved in to secure the vehicle. The standoff was brief, yet charged with an intensity that made every second seem like an eternity. In that climactic moment, as Ethan was finally apprehended and the stolen car was brought to a stop, Adam allowed himself a brief sigh of relief. The dangerous chase had reached its end, and Mia was recovered, albeit shaken and terrified. Yet, as the rain began to ease and the flashing lights of the operation slowly faded, the echoes of that night, the desperate pursuit, the heart-pounding commands, and the tiny, trembling voice of a child would remain with him forever. For Adam, the rescue of Mia was not simply an end to a chase. It was a turning point, a moment when the forces of determination and compassion had triumphed over the darkness of obsession. In the aftermath of the relentless chase, the trail of evidence led Detective Adam Keller to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a desolate structure that had long been forgotten by time, its walls echoing with memories of neglect. Here, beneath a pale moon and against a backdrop of broken windows and creaking floors, Ethan had chosen to make his final stand. The warehouse, with its eerie silence and oppressive atmosphere, became the stage for a confrontation that would decide the fate of little Mia and the final resolution of a case marred by obsession and betrayal. Under the cold light of the moon, the warehouse loomed like a monolith of decay. Its outer walls, scarred by the passage of years and weathered by neglect, offered little protection from the harsh realities within. As Adam and his team approached, the flashing lights of police vehicles danced across the broken facade, casting long, distorted shadows that lent the building an almost otherworldly quality. Every officer moved with calculated precision, their mission clear: secure the premises, locate Mia, and apprehend Ethan before any further tragedy could occur. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with tension and the oppressive scent of rust and old wood. In a cavernous, dimly lit chamber, Ethan stood, his hand clutched tightly around a gleaming knife. His eyes were wild, burning with a mix of rage and despair that betrayed the depths of his obsession. In the corner of the room, Mia was held captive, a small, trembling figure huddled in fear. Her wide, tear-filled eyes silently pleaded for rescue, her small form a poignant reminder of all that was at stake. Adam stepped forward into the room, his voice calm but filled with the unwavering authority of a man who had seen too much suffering to back down now. "Ethan, it ends now," he declared, his tone resonating with finality as he moved closer. The room fell into a heavy, charged silence, broken only by the rhythmic drip of water from the leaky roof. For a long moment, the forces of good and evil faced each other. Adam's steadfast determination against Ethan's desperate defiance. Ethan's voice, raw and filled with a tortured resignation, broke the silence. "I had to do it," he muttered, his words barely audible over the pounding of hearts. "If I couldn't have her, nobody would." The confession was chilling in its simplicity, a glimpse into the twisted rationale of a man whose life had been consumed by a destructive obsession. The knife in his hand shimmered under the sparse light, a symbol of the irreversible harm caused by unchecked emotion. Adam's eyes never wavered from Ethan's as he issued a steady command: "Let Mia go, or we will have no choice." The threat was implicit in his tone, a promise of swift, unyielding action if the situation escalated further. For several agonizing moments, the standoff hung in the balance. Every second stretched out as if time itself recognized the gravity of the moment. Then, in a sudden burst of movement, Adam lunged forward. The ensuing struggle was a blur of shouts, scuffling footsteps, and the clashing sound of metal against concrete. In the chaos, Adam fought not only for his own life, but for the life of a terrified child whose future depended on his actions. Amid the whirlwind of conflict, Mia's soft cries rang out, a stark reminder of the stakes at hand. "Hold on, Mia," Adam whispered, his voice both soothing and resolute as he battled to free her from Ethan's desperate grasp. The fight reached a fevered pitch. Every movement was a testament to the raw determination of a man who had dedicated his life to protecting the innocent. In one final, desperate moment, Adam managed to disarm Ethan, the knife clattering to the cold floor with a resounding crash. Ethan staggered backward, his face a contorted mask of fury and defeat. "It's over," Adam declared, his voice a blend of relief and solemn resolve that echoed through the cavernous space. With the immediate threat neutralized and Mia safely released, the warehouse slowly fell into a heavy silence. Officers quickly moved in to secure Ethan, who now slumped in resigned defeat. The violent confrontation, as chaotic and painful as it had been, marked a turning point, a moment when justice and protection triumphed over the destructive forces of obsession and rage. As Adam stood amidst the aftermath, his eyes surveyed the scene, the battered walls, the scattered remnants of the struggle, and the small figure of Mia, now cradled in the comforting arms of a nearby officer. The final confrontation had not only saved a life, but had also laid bare the deep scars inflicted by a chain of irreversible actions. Every bruise, every drop of blood, was a testament to the high price of the dark secrets that had torn through the lives of those involved. In the reflective calm that followed, Detective Adam Keller took a deep breath, knowing that while the immediate danger had been quelled, the journey toward complete healing and truth was only just beginning. The warehouse, once a silent witness to violence, now stood as a solemn reminder of the fragile line between justice and chaos. As the first light of dawn began to filter through grimy windows, Adam silently vowed that he would continue to pursue every remaining thread of the case until every hidden truth was brought into the light. In the days and weeks following the harrowing final confrontation, the city was enveloped in a somber mood, a collective attempt to come to terms with the tragedy that had irrevocably altered the lives of many. The arrest of Ethan had provided a measure of closure, yet the raw, unhealed wounds remained palpable in every conversation and every tear shed in quiet moments. For Detective Adam Keller, the case had evolved into much more than a search for a killer. It had become a profound exploration of human vulnerability, the destructive power of hidden secrets, and the enduring quest for redemption. Ethan's confession, delivered in a tone as cold as it was dispassionate, had sent ripples through the community. "If I couldn't have her, nobody would," he had stated, his words echoing in the minds of everyone who had followed the case. The chilling simplicity of his rationale underscored a disturbing truth, that a single unbridled obsession could unleash chaos and shatter lives beyond repair. As news of his arrest and subsequent trial spread, the community struggled to reconcile the peaceful image of their neighborhood with the dark undercurrents that had been exposed. For Sarah, the emotional toll was immense. In the quiet solitude of early mornings, she would sit alone, haunted by the memories of her own actions, the angry messages, the unspoken threats, and the deep-seated jealousy that had clouded her judgment. "I never meant for any of this to happen," she would whisper to herself, her voice trembling with regret. The realization that her own insecurities and fears had contributed, however indirectly, to the chain of events that ended in violence was a burden that she knew would linger for a lifetime. Each day, as she tried to rebuild her fractured world, the weight of her guilt and the echo of her misdirected anger were constant companions. Mark, too, was forced to confront the hidden fissures in his marriage. The revelation of his financial troubles, long kept secret beneath a facade of silent resignation, had exposed the vulnerabilities that had ultimately fueled the fire of suspicion. In hushed conversations with close friends, he admitted that a lack of communication had allowed misunderstandings to fester, misunderstandings that had contributed to the collapse of the delicate equilibrium within their home. His admission was not an excuse, but a painful acknowledgement that the breakdown of trust was a slow, insidious process that had laid the groundwork for tragedy. Little Mia, whose innocence had been shattered by the events of that terrible night, was the most profound casualty of this ordeal. The small girl, once so full of hope and laughter, now bore the scars of trauma that no child should ever have to endure. Specialized counselors and devoted social workers worked tirelessly to create an environment in which she could begin to heal. In quiet moments when the world around her seemed to pause, Mia's eyes would reflect a profound sadness, a silent testament to a night when the safety of her home was violently dismantled. Yet even in that sorrow, there glimmered a fragile spark of resilience, a quiet determination to find a way back to the light. Throughout this painful journey, Detective Adam Keller remained a steadfast guardian. He made regular visits to the temporary shelter where Mia was staying, offering words of comfort and reassurances that the monsters of that dark night were gone. "The monsters are gone now," he would say softly, his voice imbued with both compassion and a fierce resolve to protect the innocent. His promise was not merely words. It was a solemn commitment born from years of witnessing the worst that humanity could offer and emerging, however battered, with an unwavering belief in the possibility of redemption. The impact of the case reverberated beyond the immediate circle of those directly involved. The quiet suburb, once a bastion of peace, was now a community forced to confront the harsh reality that even the most idyllic places could harbor dark secrets. Neighborhood meetings were held, where residents discussed the importance of mental health, the need for open communication, and the ways in which a community must remain vigilant against the subtle forces of jealousy and mistrust. The tragedy had shattered illusions, leaving behind a collective resolve to ensure that such a nightmare would never again take root in their midst. As the investigation slowly wound down, Adam spent countless hours compiling his final report. Every detail, the forensic evidence, the shattered lives, the confessions, and the whispers of long-held secrets was meticulously documented. The report was not just a case file, it was the chronicle of a journey through the darkest corners of the human heart. In its pages, Adam recorded the painful lessons learned, that trust, once broken, leaves scars that may never fully fade, and that the weight of hidden truths can be unbearable. In the quiet solitude of one early morning, Adam walked the familiar streets of the neighborhood, his mind awash with memories of the case. He paused outside the modest home where the tragedy had begun, now a place marked not by fear, but by the quiet resilience of a community determined to rebuild. The echoes of that fateful night of cries and whispers, of desperation and hope, were etched into every brick, every window, and as the soft light of dawn began to disperse the lingering shadows, Adam felt a renewed sense of duty, a commitment to carry the weight of the truth, however painful, so that future generations might learn from the past. Detective Adam Keller understood that the journey toward healing was only just beginning. The case had exposed the dark undercurrents of human emotion, the envy, the fear, and the desperate need for connection that could lead to irreversible acts. Yet it had also shown him that even amid overwhelming darkness, there could be a spark of hope. With every step he took, every piece of evidence that came to light, Adam reaffirmed his belief in the transformative power of truth and the resilience of the human spirit. In the aftermath of the tragedy, as the community slowly began to mend and the promise of a new day emerged, the weight of truth, painful, complex, and enduring, served as both a burden and a beacon. It was a reminder that while some wounds may never fully heal, the relentless pursuit of justice and the courage to confront our deepest flaws can pave the way for a future defined by honesty, compassion, and hope.